Hi, welcome to Tales from the Sky Lounge. It's a podcast about business, consulting, and venture investing. We get out there in the world and we talk to people who are making it happen and we get their stories. So if you could like and subscribe, it helps us to get our message out. Today in the Sky Lounge, we have Kirby Winters. Hi, Kirby. How are you?
Great, Todd. How you doing? Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you and what you're working on?
Sure. I've been around Atlanta for pretty much my whole life. Love living here. I've done some stints outside of the city, but keep coming back and done a lot of traveling over the years, which is just great for sanity and meeting good people and all that kind of thing. But I started out in telecom, spent a lot of time there, did a little consulting. And then over the years, it led me into owning my own business. I had a lot of opportunities over time to start some businesses, and they either went different ways as they always do. And finally, really dove in and started my own business. Did that for 11 years and sold it in 2011. And from there, went back into consulting. And now I'm with TechCXO. So TechCXO is a great little consulting organization where I lead up our information security program. And we do essentially fractional and interim CISO work and provide compliance services to a lot of our clients. So I really enjoy it.
Very cool. And I see behind you, you're kind of modest about it, but you're an Eagle Scout.
Yes.
So fellow Eagle Scout here. So can we talk about that for just 1 second? Boy Scouts is a great leadership development organization. Has that helped you through your career? When you go into these companies and you provide senior leadership?
Absolutely. It's amazing how many little nuggets I find all the time that come back to me from things that I learned in the Scouts. It's such a great program, and it starts off by teaching you that you need to just do the work, right? When you first go in, you're a younger Scout, you do the things you have to do to make sure everybody eats, everybody gets their the tent set up, do all the things that need to be done for camp out and whatever project you're working on. And then it naturally leads you up into becoming that senior patrol leader and leading the other scouts, but walking the walk, not just pointing and saying, do this, but knowing that you have to be part of the program. And that's something that has stuck with me my entire life. And my favorite leaders I've worked with have embodied that. And the ones that I've learned that what I didn't want to be, didn't do those kind of things.
Yeah. And you've probably had your share of good and bad leadership experiences and good and bad teams under you as well. You got any outstanding stories, from your career you want to talk about in terms of good and bad leadership that have changed the course of a project that you've been on?
Oh, absolutely. Early on in my formative years in business world, one of my favorite leaders was someone that took me under his wing and really, again, walked the walk. He was one of the earliest people to arrive, latest to leave, always working really hard at giving us the resources we needed to make something happen, and then teaching us along the way. And I really admired all the things that he did, and I've tried to embody that. One of my other really good mentors was in the armed forces and the Navy, was a leader in that area. He was very humble, yet one of the smartest people I ever knew, and just absolutely incredible to learn those nuggets of leadership, but also how to motivate people. And, one of his favorite stories, which is said by many other people, what his phrases was, it's amazing what you can get accomplished when you don't care who gets the credit.
Hey, yeah.
And that's just a huge nugget that I've always tried to live by. But then I've seen other people that, had some bad stories where tough organizations where they're changing priorities all the time. They're not giving people a good leadership role of what we should be doing. And then, going on vacation all the time, coming back and then changing everything up. And I'm like, oh, that was a horrible experience. you don't want to be doing that.
So if you're talking to that, the early leadership, it seems like, when you're, 6 or 8 years into your career out of college, especially in technology, you kind of face a fork, right? Mm-hmm. If you see a fork in the road, take it, Yogi Berra. But, you can remain a technical, individual contributor and do very well, right? Yep. Or you can kind of go the people management route. What do folks like what should folks like that at that critical juncture that could be the next great leader that aspire to executive leadership, which is a whole nother level? What do you think they should be thinking about, or what kind of skills should they be honing or looking for help with?
I think there's really two main schools of thought there, right? Is that I've seen people that are really excellent technically, that are just great at driving innovation and building systems, and they get pushed into management and they don't want to do it. They're not good at it. They don't like it. And that talent is getting wasted. But then I also see people that are great motivators that really everybody gets behind and get stuck in roles that don't really use all their talents. So, would say is that from a leadership perspective, those people that are grooming those people to do different things need to be looking at their talents and maximizing them. Great companies like SpaceX and Tesla and others, they don't try to put square peg in round hole. They're saying, I'm going to take this person. You're a great engineer, then be an engineer, and we're going to harness every bit of acumen and talent that you have there. But if you're a leader and someone that really enjoys that social interaction and is good at negotiating, good in working in that supply chain, then we're going to put you there. Mm-hmm. So my thing is look internally and say, what is it I'm best at? What makes me happy? And then drive that and make the most of that. And that's where I think people can get the most out of their career and be happiest.
And you're kind of an interesting career path, right? You've got a lot of very distinct experiences, right? I think at one point you were a sales leader. You've been a business owner. You've been a technical person, contributor, and a subject matter expert. Do you feel like when you get to that executive level, that's important, that's pretty common, that people they've kind of had this cross train, mentality, or if you've had experiences where you've been, the engineer, but you've also been in sales or marketing and sales, or, HR and marketing, or, is that an important part of the soup, the recipe, for being an executive, or can you just kind of be a single trick pony and pull it off?
I think the best leaders are ones that have been in the trenches and done a lot of different things. I came out of business school when I was in college, and it was a really tough time in the market. There was very few jobs out there, and I just kind of jumped in and took something that made sense, to pay the bills at the time. Mm-hmm. And then, but I also aspired to learning every possible thing that I could. I was very technically, had good technical acumen, was really focused on those things, did programming, but ended up in financial analyst roles, started working in sales, corporate sales enablement. And then from there, dove in as the internet just exploded, got deep into the internet side of it, writing web pages, building out, dynamic systems, and then working on large scale billing systems for some of the customers that I was working for at the time. But nothing will broaden your capabilities more than starting your own business. I mean, you have to do everything. Like it's a kind of a trope at this point, but it's absolutely true that you have to be in sales, you have to be in HR, you have to be in operations, you have to do all these things. Otherwise the business will fail. You can't just suddenly outsource all of that and expect your business to make money. So I think that was very helpful, because now when I work in cybersecurity and we see that permeates through the entire organization, then I can talk to the HR team and understand what they're going through. And I can talk with the finance team and understand, what they're trying to accomplish, while still helping apply these rules that help protect people.
Yeah. And I think that's what separates an entrepreneur from, a career in a very large company, where you just kind of been in that role forever and ever and ever. Tell us, I love this entrepreneurial stories, right? So you're working in Dilbert land, a cubicle dweller in the telecom space, probably, I don't know. And then, at what point do you decide I'm going to start a business? And then what kind of talk to us about how that happened? And then what was the catalyst to get you to go on your own?
A lot of people get there in different ways. And one of my kind of comments I always make is I always wanted to work myself down in size of business until I could be my own boss. Okay. My father was in real estate. He was a corporate real estate broker, ran his own business, was successful with that. I saw that as where I wanted to be, not to be the CEO of a big company, but the pinnacle would be to own my own business and be able to grow that. And then as I did that, I started out in one of the biggest companies in the world. It was GT Wireless, but it's now Verizon, so a massive telecom company. And then worked my way down in size, and that really helped me get into these different roles and see where I would fit the best. And then as I got into running my own business, I realized all of those tools were things that I needed to know where I'm going with my business on the long term. And then those lessons, once you become your own boss, you own your own business, are much harder than anything you ever realized. Managing payroll and managing people and having to fire and hire a lot more than you ever expected to do. Mm-hmm. But then also, satisfying customers in a way that still is profitable. It's a funny story when you're working with a customer and you're doing a project where you have set deliverables, and then you have to say, I'm going to do this for this price, and then you looking to do that, you have to explain to the customer that I have a profit that I have to make. We have to, we're not a nonprofit business. we need to stay in business and keep reinvesting into ourselves. And so that you learn this whole budgeting and project management and other tools to ensure that you're delivering what you say you're going to deliver, but at the same time doing it in a way that's profitable.
Got it. And then at the end of the business, how did you decide? It's always painful. It's a tough thing. A series of tough decisions culminates in the ultimate decision. When you decide, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore. What was that like at the end of that?
We always had an exit strategy. I mean, that you start by from the beginning by thinking where you want to be at the end, and I really knew that I had three different, avenues that I was looking to go to. And I had one of my mentors early on said, you need to plan for these three different eventualities, and one is selling the business. Another is growing by acquisition. And then another is growing just incrementally by adding new business and adding people and adding sales. Hopefully you're always growing or trying to, and that's where you're trying to get to. So we looked at all three of those scenarios. I was fortunate to have a good business partner that I worked with, and he and I both started the business and grew it. Going back to one of your earlier questions, my wife was very supportive, had a good job at the time. I was at a good point where I was like, all right, I'm going to dive in and do this entrepreneurial piece. Mm-hmm. And I got to work with some great customers. I had medical universities, I had healthcare providers, I had finance organizations, and also got to work with the DoD and doing some really interesting projects. So that's how I kind of came to the security side of things. And then as we looked at growing and trying to exponentially add to where we were, one of our close partner customers close partner companies we're working with said, hey, let's do some more together. We had a complementary set of skills that they didn't have, and they had a complementary set of skills that we didn't have as much of. And we started working closer together. And one day their CEO was talking to us and said, so tell me more about your customers and the size of your business. And less than a year later, they had purchased us. And
how about that?
So it was just a neat little kind of thing that happened. We weren't planning it, but we were always planning for that eventuality. So it's just the way things worked.
Very cool. And then did you have to stick around after that, or do you have an earnout or anything that you had to?
For me, I just took a buyout. So okay. We had a good group of engineers, a good group of interactive designers. We were a software development firm. We did consulting. We had some offshore people that worked for us. And so when I came in, they were a bigger organization. They were about 10 times our size. And, they looked around and said, hey, where do you see yourself fit? Where does you see this work? And I'm like, well, it seems like you got a lot of people like me. What do you want me to do? And they're like, what do you want to do? I'm like, I want to go do something else.
Yes.
And they're like, okay. And right. they did a buyout.
Yeah. Done and done. Yeah. It's relatively painless. What a great story.
Yeah. Worked out well.
Yeah. And there's a lot of ways to screw up the deal after you're kind of done. Right. So it sounds like you got out gracefully and, got onto cooler and more interesting things. So which leads us to cybersecurity, one of my favorite things to talk about. So you and I both have a pretty deep cyber background. I think we come at it from maybe a little bit different angles. I grew up in the cyber security software vendor space as a selling cyber software or producing and selling, and then I think you're more on the consulting side. Policies, procedures, and that kind of thing, and governance. It's kind of interesting. The older I get, the more hesitant I am to post on social media. And I really I'm at the point now where people think I'm a little bit kooky, when I go to, like a party or something, a social gathering, and somebody posts a picture and tags me on Facebook. I kind of go, ooh, can you please not do that? And then, am I crazy to do that? Or, is that, is there a danger there? Just broadcasting your whole life out on social media.
I think
how do we think about that?
I think that's very smart. And, I think there's two sides of social media now. There's very much the business side. So it's been developed into a business process that social media is really taking over for the traditional news and media. There's a part of that still exists, but you see these influencers and some of these other people, and they're valid. They making money off of it. They're doing a good business of it, but they're treating it very much as a business. Mm-hmm. And I like to advise people now. It's like in their social side, be careful of how things are being posted, especially if they're being posted out to the greater world without controls around it, because it can be used against you. And that's the thing you just want to protect against. I know with kids today, and I have a son. We've been very careful with him because when social media first started coming out, it was very just about let's just share stories, and then it became, I hate to use this term, but to some extent it became weaponized, where it is now used to either greatly amplify something, which can be positive, or greatly amplify something that's very negative, and you have to watch out how that's being managed. So especially you see with people going into the military and working with military organizations. Mm-hmm. One of the first things they do is look at your social media presence and try to understand, how you've been depicted, what you've shared, and to what extent that can be used against you. They run analysis against it. So it is something that I think you have to be a lot more careful of today. It's good to be used for certain purposes. That's the way I use it now, but I've become a lot more conservative about, what I post to as well.
I feel like you need a presence. You don't need
Absolutely.
You don't need to tell everybody what you ate for breakfast or where you went to vacation or how those stupid politicians, go on a rant. But but if you don't post something, people are going to look for you. If they don't find anything, they're going to keep going until they do find something. It's kind of a quandary.
Completely agree. I've seen a lot of people get hurt, that if you put too much out there, that emotionalism that they can garner by saying, "Oh, I see you have I see you have a relative here or someone here." Maybe grab some information about you on who you're connected to, and then use that as a way to try to get money or get favors or get something out of you. And some people have gotten really hurt by that very badly. There's a lot of shows now too that kind of go into that and kind of take it a little, to the extreme, but it's absolutely happening every day. So, and the best advice I can give in that front is to be healthily skeptical. Check things that are happening, especially if somebody asking you for something, especially if somebody's trying to get money or personal information out of you. Mm-hmm. And one of the simplest things I tell people is, make sure your credit reporting systems are all locked down. There's 3 major credit reporting agencies. It's free to go and lock them down. Especially with the big breach that happened with the everybody's social security numbers now.
National public data. Yeah.
You just have to assume that it's out there.
It's out there.
And it's up to you to make sure you're protecting yourself.
For sure. So I went to an age tech meetup recently, and I heard a pitch from a nice company, and they had a an app that would help seniors with their tech. hey, how do I connect this mouse to this, laptop? What, something
Yep. Yep.
pretty simple. And then what they figured out was majority of the questions were like, hey, I got this weird text. Can you, is this a scam? And then so like there's a lot of predatory behavior, that goes by, if you're not careful, if you don't have your guard up, and then, you worry about the children or elderly, that haven't had the experiences yet, or might not know, or might not care, or, there's a lot of easy ways to fall victim to, $5,000, $100, 20 grand, we've all had kind of those experiences where you had a near miss or a miss. Any stories you want to share about that, or personal?
I know someone whose elderly parent called him and was like, "Yeah, so I Microsoft called the other day, and I had to give him a password."
Mm-hmm.
It was like, Microsoft did not call you.
Yeah.
And we're gonna take that computer out back and burn it. So
yeah, that happened to my dad. He's a business owner, small business owner, and so I think it's the same scam. You can't. It's funny, they said, hey, is this really a thing? They called me. So, we got it shut down. It's no harm, no foul.
And that's where that healthy skepticism has to come into play. That with AI, we haven't talked about that, but that is going to just exponentially make these things happen. You're going to have the scammers out there putting in an AI bot that just calls everybody in the world and tries to get something out of them. If they get, 1/10 of 1/10 of 1/10 of percent, they're still going to make crazy amounts of money potentially scamming people.
Mm-hmm.
So our goal is to try to shut those things down as an industry, but then also make sure everybody understands don't accept this out of hand. You always have to check and protect. I had a client that had a CFO that just randomly sent $500,000 off to somebody because he got an email that said, this is the CEO. You have to send this right now. This is critical. Don't even check on me. Just send it. And I'm like, he's 2 doors down, and you didn't go walk down and check before you wired this money, and it just it blows the mind sometimes that logic that just isn't there to say, wait, stop.
It's a lot of money.
Verify this.
Yeah.
Come back.
Was that a payments company? I wonder if it's the same one I'm thinking of. I know there's another company that I was around that happened to. I don't know if you want to say. We don't have to.
It's a different company than a payments company.
Okay.
But this happened to multiple of my clients.
Yeah. Same story.
Another one that same kind of thing where they had had an account that was left fallow for a while, and it got compromised, and the alerts didn't happen, and then all these funds get siphoned out because they weren't paying attention to their alerts. They weren't checking back on these roles. They weren't listening, and the way they got into that account was essentially social engineering. They called the right person, got the right access to it, and then nobody was checking up on it. It was really surprising but frustrating.
Kind of goes back to like Facebook, putting a lot of details. Hey, this is CEO. I'm in X city. You can get that off Facebook or LinkedIn. Like, because hey, I'm going to a trade show, and then you're just like, hey, I got to promote my company, and then scammer calls in and goes, oh my God, I'm with key client. You can see the template forming, right? You have to transfer 20 grand right now to the following account or to my credit card.
A fallacy that oh, I'm too small, or I'm not important enough, or they're not going to bother me, so I don't need to worry about that. But this is a shotgun approach from the scammers now. There are people all over the world that are just using tools, even some AI tools, to scour the internet to find this information, and then shotgunning it out and trying to get one that they get a bite on. And if they can get that, then they focus on that. And it doesn't matter if you're in a $10 million or $10 billion company. It's just whoever that they're able to get to.
What scares me about all the AI stuff is when you start chaining all this stuff together. You have AI that's good at figuring out what emotions, reading people. It's getting better and better, right? You have AI that is adaptive, like this generative stuff that kind of is different every time. So it's not, you can't just like do a string match and go, oh, that's the Nigerian whatever scam. You can't do that anymore. It's getting more and more clever. You have to have a finer and finer grain,
Yeah,
mesh between you and the world,
absolutely.
they
And
can dial
those
phones.
emotional triggers are things that are easy to manipulate.
Mhm.
And if they use that effectively and can hit one, two, three emotional triggers, the brain starts thinking, maybe this is real and maybe it is important. And my fault for not responding to it, not taking helping this person like I should could be really bad. And they play on those emotions, and it's just going to get even more sophisticated as they incorporate more, AI tools for it.
So let me pick your brain on this. So, you know, thinking through cyber insurance, that's
Hmm.
become, I've seen it in my practice. I think we've compared notes. More and more people are needing cyber insurance now, and then therefore, more controls in their business. What do you think's going on with the cyber insurance industry that's driving that? Are they, these huge monster mega, national public data breach is going to cost a lot of money, right? So you think they're just kind of wising up? Are hackers getting better? What's going on with that, or what are you seeing in the cyber insurance world right now?
I think there's two sides to it. I mean, I think there's the hackers that are getting more and more sophisticated, and there's not a concerted effort. I mean, there is that's not true to exactly say that. There's not a big holistic effort to go after them all the time. We are putting tools in place. There are obviously government agencies that are out there trying to do things, but there's just not enough of those resources to protect against all of them. And so they're only going to keep doing it as long as they're making good money off of it. And then on the cyber insurance side, you've got these companies that are for profit companies, obviously. And their goal is to, save up enough money to pay on these claims only for people that are doing the right things and have at least minimal protections in place. I've been in the cyber industry for 10 plus years now, full time, and the problem that I see is that the cyber insurance companies they're not going to pay out if there's not the effective protections in place to have at least made a legitimate attempt to prevent these things.
Wow.
And so what I end up saying to all of my clients is the best protection as you can afford, because if even if you buy the cyber security insurance, your probability of getting a payout on that is in the 10 to 20% range, in my opinion.
No
Of
kidding.
the 50 plus claims that I've seen over the years, I've only seen 5 to 10 that ever got paid out.
Wow. And what is it? When people get hacked and materially lose money and have a problem, legal problem, what is usually the cause, or what is usually going on? Is it quantum computers hacking on the encryption, or is it something else?
It's almost always social engineering of some sort or a mistake. I had one client that had a big breach because one of their external systems did not get patched, right? I mean, I know, super silly, right? But it's one of their command and control systems that did not get patched, and it had some accessibility, and just a random scan by these guys on the internet caught it, and they were able to get in and then move laterally across their network and do some major damage. Another instance, a helper server was sitting out there that just didn't get patched, and someone was able to hop in and get into the rest of the network and cause a lot of expensive damage. And then we also see a lot of the social engineering where someone calls up and acts like an IT or is able to get into one of the systems and one of the accounts. And then if you can get deep enough, you go into some of these cloud systems and you can just start running internal discovery tools and start finding things within the organization, and again, either find account numbers and start trying to transfer money around, or get large swaths of private information that they can either extort or sell on the black market. So
Yes.
yeah, that's what I'm seeing more and more. And if a company has a open hole, if they're not doing the protections they say they're doing, then the cybersecurity insurance company is going to do everything they can to not pay that.
Wow. I think I saw something on social media, consumer, yesterday or this week. They said the best way in is like a polo with an embroidered logo saying you're the telecom guy, with a bag of tools that look kind of complicated. Hey, show me in. Okay, yeah, no problem. Or like a janitor bag. Nobody wants. I'll leave you alone. It's right over here. Come on in, and then you're in. And then we talk about like defense in depth. The lane. We used to talk about you could lock down your floor and you had key card access to the floor of your commercial real estate space back in the day when that was a thing, right? And then you had your servers, you had physical servers in a closet or in a data room on that floor, or maybe one floor up. You could run physical cables. That's kind of an odd that we don't do things that way anymore, right? So you can't, surround your servers with physical walls and electronic surveillance. So now we have organizations, we have the cloud, right? Everybody wants to onshore, offshore, nearshore. You got prolific use of vendors that can be anywhere in the world, and that's very cost effective and nimble. Take advantage of talent where it is. How does that defense landscape change now? That we have people all over the place. It doesn't help that people are at home on unsecured cable modem or, DSL or fiber line. Maybe not DSL anymore, but, how has the cyber landscape, protection industry had to adapt, or what should we be looking at right now that's kind of new and different from where we were 5 or even 10 years ago?
It's a great question, and it's fascinating watching the advent and development and movement of these things. I remember when I started out in telecom, and I was in one of our big enterprise sales teams, and one of our big products was we called it a VPN. It was a virtual private network, but it's not like what it is today. It was where we actually allocated physical lines in a given worldwide network, like an MCI or like a Sprint. And these physical lines would be dedicated to this particular corporation, and they would hook up their computers to it, and they would share it through those specific lines, and we would guarantee that only they had access to those lines, and it gave them that capability. Now our encryption that we use today, the zero trust networks and some of these CASBs, that there's a lot of different technology names now, but essentially it means a solid VPN. We can do that virtually from someone at their home to the corporate network to their cloud computing to their financial center to their and even front that in front of their cloud applications. So one of my clients that has a big application that they built in Salesforce and has a lot of PHI data in it, and we've been able to front protect that access into Salesforce through their VPN provider. So even if you could get into Salesforce, you can't get into their system without going through the VPN. So this is just another layer of saying, great, we're going to create a virtual private cable from offices, from home office, from anywhere in the world into those systems in a way that protects it a lot better. And then we can observe the traffic that goes through there. So that monitoring and logging and being able to get the right alerts to have teams that can react to a potential breach or activity that looks like it shouldn't be there. Then doing all that together as a comprehensive network is something that we can do today in this modern era for a minuscule fraction of a cost that we used to be able to do 20 years ago. It's really pretty amazing to see.
Yeah, when I talk to my old telecom buddies, it used to be feeds and speeds, and you rent a time slice, or a T1 out of the OC 192 or whatever, and so now it's all about software defined networking. Everything's gotten a lot more sophisticated. The fiber's just kind of big dumb highway now.
Yep.
It's not so everything's a lot more elegant and complicated, and therefore there's a lot more potential attack area. I mean, it's just gotten worse and worse as we've gotten more and more sophisticated and more optimized in our networking.
I
Um,
love it that I can recommend to my smaller clients now, 20, 40, 50 employee company and say, you really need a VPN. And in the past, they'd be like, I can't afford that. And now they're like, well, tell me about that. And it's like, oh, it's, $8 to $10 a month for this comprehensive system that protects your entire system and connects you into your applications and it protects you while you're traveling. And like, wow, that's great. Okay, that makes sense. And it's just a really awesome system that's very affordable now, where used to those things would be hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars to put in place.
you talk about like cycles in the tech world. Everything's new. Again, it used to be mainframe, and then it was like client server, and then it was like distributed, and then now we're back in the cloud. Is that wheel going to come back around? Are you seeing? I'm seeing like interest in going back, reclaiming your servers. Particularly with AI. We're talking about AI all the time. You can't. A lot of times you can't just go rent. A billion GPU server. Up in Amazon or GCP or something. Yeah. So people are starting to think, okay, should we have our own farm again? Our own colo or our own data center. Our colo is going to come back around. Are people going to have data centers again and want to own their own infrastructure? Are you seeing a push toward that? And then
I think that with AWS and Azure and all the other cloud providers, Oracle, you name it, they kind of had a lock on it because they bought up a lot of that, the SSD drives and the GPUs and the CPUs and built these massive data centers and could then just fraction them out and give it to end users. But now the AI farms are gobbling up all of the big data processing and using it for their own models, for their own systems. And I think that you're right. I think that's going to give a pinch into the smaller guys. They're like, I need to run my EMR over here, and I'm paying way too much to Amazon. I'm going to move it back into a colo and run it, because the cost of those SSDs, the cost of those server infrastructures have come down significantly. And I think you're right. I think we're going to see some of that for specialized, but for organizations that are still trying to massively scale, they're going to need to work with one of those, bigger providers. And I think
sure,
what the bigger providers still give is that if your business isn't consistent with how much resources you're using, you still need that, load balancing where you can scale up the servers and scale back down, scale up and scale back down as needed. But I do think it's going to be very interesting to see. You look at the XAI, you look at OpenAI, Microsoft, Amazon. I mean, Google's just doing massive things with their Gemini. They're building data centers all over the world to handle these new AI capabilities. I can definitely see a pinch being put into the other providers and other needs of companies.
right? Yeah. So let's talk about business cycle for a second.
Sure.
Everybody's got SOC 2 problem.
Mhm.
Everybody wants to do better at cybersecurity, PCI, HIPAA, whole alphabets out there, right?
Yep.
It costs money to do these things. IT admins, sysadmins, it's kind of a lost art. Those folks can kind of tend to get a little bit expensive or a little bit exotic, compared to where, we used to just rent the cloud. Um, so there's a natural proclivity towards saving money right now, in this downstroke of the business cycle. Everybody wants to save money and cut cost centers, but you know, you know, it takes one security breach incident that's very public to really take down your reputation for a long, long, long time. You can't do that. It's an asymmetric risk.
Yep.
How do we think about that? How do you coach your clients, or what do you see? How do you see people navigating that trade off between, man, I really don't want to spend more money on a VPN or something, and board governance, for example, coming in and going, look, you have to have a risk analysis, and you cannot have a breach. Unacceptable.
That's what I've really enjoyed about building this information security practice inside TechCXO, is that I think we are running into a resource problem, resource gap with the the compliance management professionals. There's just not enough. And the problem is you don't need them all year long either, right? That you're not, unless you're a billion-dollar business, you're not going to go out and hire a full team of audit compliance management people to run the things that need to be done. So you have once or twice a year these SOC 2s, these other audits, whether it's HIPAA self-assessment, you may be doing CMMC is coming down the pipe. All of those need to be addressed, and you need somebody who understands it well. And so the fractional side that we do is really neat, that we actually can come in and do it multiple times throughout the year with resources that are up on all the details, and then work with the internal people to collect that and then help them get it to the audit team and complete that work. We're seeing more and more that the bigger organizations, so you have like small to medium sized organizations working with the big Fortune 500 corporate organizations, and they're forcing them to maintain that compliance. They're saying, look, we're not going to work with you unless you do these things to prove to us that you're protecting our data that you're working with us on. And so, working with the right team, there are some tools out there that help automate that process. We've not seen yet that there's any way of getting around certain of that just human element of understanding what the controls are, collecting the information, delivering it to the auditor, explaining the uses of it, and then allowing them to generate that report that overall improves the efficiency of the organization. You're not having to answer all these assessments throughout the year. You can just deliver a SOC 2 report to someone. But it also is a badge of honor and a little bit of a sales tool to say, great, we now are compliant. You can trust us. And that's one of the best benefits of getting these things implemented. But it's going to be a resource cap. There's not going to be enough people. There's not going to be enough CISOs out there, people with experience that we have. And that's why we think we have a neat model of helping people out by distributing that work across multiple businesses and giving a very efficient result for our customers.
You need a CISO. You don't need a full-time CISO.
Right.
Yeah. And to me, it's like an evolutionary step in a business. It's fun because we work with a lot of smaller to mid-sized businesses and they grow. You get to see that one evolutionary point that's kind of painful where you go, hey, you just took a Series A, or you got that big customer that happens to be state of Ohio, or GE or somebody huge. But oh, by the way, we got to fill all these forms now. And one of them is, what do you do for your compliance and your cyber compliance? And it's not a check the box anymore. It's you either hand them a SOC 2 letter or you got a lot of questions to answer, and they're probably it's going to be uncomfortable for a minute. So once you kind of get over that hump and you go, hey, we got organized, I see it more like, fintech or payments, or, those folks know they have a problem early. So they tend to get it early, but like real estate or, things that don't have healthcare, don't have money.
Manufacturing. Yeah.
They tend to kind of delay. And then, at some point they get that big fish. And then, something happens, or, they have to get the cyber insurance, which drives a lot of the stuff, or they get that big customer, or, something happens, so I don't know. How often have you seen those little companies that are kind of in these not super critical industries as far as cyber, kind of fall into a pothole along the way? It's just kind of, not paying attention, and, they get a, bad actor, internal, external, that shakes them down for money or information.
Yeah.
Does that happen? How often do you see that?
All the time. And what I hope is that it's not a breach or some, terrible event that causes them to go down that path. I like to say, you don't do an audit because you want to, you do it because somebody told you have to, right? It's a cost. It's a lot of effort. And if you don't have to, then most people don't. The smarter small to medium sized businesses will say, I see this coming. We're working with bigger and bigger organizations, and we've been able to put off that requirement for a bit of time now. But they've put a stake in the sand and said, by next year you have to do this. So then they start early and say, great, let's start getting these things in place to make sure that when we get there, it's not a massive lift. We've done that for a number of our clients where we say, great, let's get you started. We're going to give you a roadmap. We're going to give you a timeline. We're going to help you build the budget. And then we're going to get to that point where you're ready to go and not have a lot of work you have to do when finally that audit time comes. The worst situations we've had a number of clients come, call us with hair on fire, right? Going, my customer says they're not going to sign this big agreement unless we commit to having our SOC 2 done in 4 months or whatever it is, end of year, or something like that. And they're like, we got to get it done now. And so then there's a lot more stress. There's a lot more upfront cost to get those in place quickly, and then finally get it over the finish line. So the better way to do it is to plan for it and start to get there, so that you can really absorb the budget over a period of time instead of all at one big hit. But the other part is to maintain that, because if you don't maintain it, then it's going to be hard to come back and fix things every year when you're not doing all the stuff you say you're doing.
Yeah. Well, and I the companies that I coach, the ones that have had a pen test just because somebody thought that'd be a good idea, and you spend the 5 or 10 or 15 grand, depending on how complicated it is, just go ahead and shake it down. They do way better, right? And they tend to have better processes. Somebody's got a Jira board that has tickets. Yep. At least you can point to it and say, hey, we're thinking about it and we're trying. And then, we have these pen test tickets. Here they are.
One of my favorite stories was a client that had a mobile app, and they had their website, and they had their customer portal, and it was all homegrown. And the engineers were very intelligent and knew what they were doing. And we've been running pen tests against their website for a long time, or they had. And we came in and said, so tell us about your mobile app. And they're like, oh, it's fine. They're like, well, what do you mean it's fine? And they were like, oh, well, we use these good coding, whatever. So, all right, well, we're going to run the pen test against the APIs for your mobile app, as well as run a security test on the actual infrastructure, and it does the app inspection and all the other stuff. And they went, I don't think we need to do that. I'm like, I'm pretty sure you do.
We definitely do now.
And they're like, okay, fine. Yeah. And they like, they're like, we do a good job. It'll be fine. Like, okay. And they found about 12 different highs and criticals that were big opportunities for getting hacked. And they were like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that was there. Oh, we got to go quickly and do it. So they went back and they fortunately jumped on it and quickly took care of it.
Yeah.
But you don't know what you don't know. And that's what's great about doing those pen tests and making sure you're hitting all the components of what's available out to your customers on the internet.
Yeah. Usually it's something silly like, oh yeah, we had that weird library that so-and-so was using. Why are we still have that in our base?
Absolutely.
Cut it out. It's easy. Just, you got to pay attention. So where are we in the business cycle? We see a lot of cost cutting going on. We've talked about that, frequently with our clients. Are we in an extended downturn? What are we about to come out of it? Should people be on the gas or the brakes? What do you think's going on right now?
I wish I had a crystal ball. That'd be great to know. But I think right now, I've seen that our clients are a little more optimistic for whatever reason. The second half of the year, first part of the year, there was a lot of pessimism, a lot of pulling back on budgets and waiting. Mm-hmm. I really kind of expected not to really know what's going to happen until after the election cycle, but I'm seeing a lot of people realize that they can't wait that long and are starting to do things. And so I think it's both in the economy saying, look, we've got to get these things done and we've got to build out our infrastructure. We have some things that are important for us to spur growth. Then they're starting to do those things. And I think from the information security perspective, because of that, you're seeing more contracts, you're seeing more interaction between customers, that those things are those requirements for the SOC 2s and for the other things are really bubbling up. And we've actually seen a lot of uptick in healthcare clients coming to us and saying, we're being told we have to do high trust, and we've got to get our HIPAA assessment done, and we just had this merger, and we've got to do this integration of our compliance team and make sure they're all doing the same thing. So that's happening a lot more in the second half of the year than we saw in the first half. So it'll be interesting to see what happens after the election cycle.
So HIPAA, I remember when HIPAA first came out, there was like all these very specific fines. It's kind of weird because, what do you have to do to be HIPAA compliant is a little bit fuzzy, and theoretical. And then it's not like some of these other, like PCI is very descriptive, prescriptive. But the fines are very, very crisp, and it's a lot of zeros. Have you seen people get nailed for fines for leaking PHI or healthcare information?
I've not had a direct a direct involvement in any fines, fortunately.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard a lot of stories. They're and they typically go after the bigger companies, the ones that are covered entities that really have a lot of transactions. The ones that are smaller but handle a lot of PHI tend to focus a lot on making sure that everything is protected. I have one client, actually a pretty big client, and we asked them the other day. We're like, so how are you handling your PHI as we're doing an assessment for them and putting it together in a nice package and help them? And they said, well, we treat pretty much everything as PHI because we have customer service, we have sales calls, we have all these things where we know there's going to be leakage. We know that's going to go through our organization. And so instead of trying to ensure all of that is out, we're just going to protect everything.
It's all in scope. Yeah, that was a common, weasel move is like, oh yeah, we don't take phone numbers and emails, so therefore it's not in scope, right?
But then I have other clients that, they have software service applications. They're highly contained and focused, and like, we never let PHI out of this area.
Mm-hmm.
So we've put up a wall and we protect it with DLP, and we protect it with training. And then we're confident that it never gets out of there. And then we treat that as all of our PHI repository and treat it as such. So it depends on the philosophy of the organization and the services they provide. And it's very interesting.
So it sounds like there's always something moving in the economy. You just have to figure out what's going on and who's doing what. And then, compliance never goes away. You still have to do it, right? You still have to protect yourself.
Everybody needs to do it, which is not a bad place to be for us in the security industry, but it's always evolving too, more so than you would expect. I mean, there's new requirements coming in all the time. We have CMMC that's still kind of out there. It's supposed to be coming in 2025. They say it finally is.
Mm-hmm.
So that's important, and it's getting a lot of excitement around government contractors saying I need to be compliant. What do I need to do? What am I missing? And I think that's going to be a big trend in 2025.
We'll talk about CMMC. What is it? And then what's different about this one that's going to change healthcare?
Well, CMMC is a government contracting certification. It's been in the works for many years. It's finally supposed to be beginning to be enforced in 2025, and it's based on NIST standards. So what we talk about is, all right, let's first go through a NIST assessment. Get a maturity score, really kind of understand where you're at, and then that will be something that a qualified assessor will review next year once this program really becomes enforced. But even after that, they're saying they're going to start building out enforcement rules in January of next year, and there's still going to be a rollout where it's not going to be immediate. You have to be compliant. So any of the government contractors are starting to get nervous. We have a couple that work with the DoD, that work with Department of Energy, some other areas like that. So they're starting to go, "Ooh, I need to really make sure we're lining up those controls that we're meeting requirements." That's going to be an interesting time next year for that, for sure.
So it sounds like a lot more teeth, a lot more rigor around the standards. Is that 27002 based NIST? Is that what you're talking about? Or?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And that's pretty comprehensive, like pretty dang specific about exactly what you have to do.
Yeah. They're big controls. There's the 853, which is kind of a foundational one, and 800-171, which is another strong set of controls. So we take both of those and use the right one for the right, depending on what the company's what services they're offering and what type of data they're transmitting.
Wow, it's always another tripwire out there somewhere.
Well, it's a little hard to keep up with. I got to be honest. I mean, there's so many acronyms and so many numbers and so many controls and rules, but they're all kind of based on NIST, truthfully, and they take that and then roll it up and make it their own. High Trust is great, and it's a really kind of premium type of audit control set, but it's a for-profit company that runs it, and they're very closed about how they manage it. So it's certainly an interesting one to work through.
Need a friend like Kirby who lives and breathes this stuff all the time. So let me kind of switch gears. It's all about travel and getting out there in the world. You got any great travel stories you want to share with us?
I think it's very important to travel. My wife and I have loved traveling. That's one of the things that brought us together. And we went back to France this year. We got engaged in France 20 plus years ago, 26 years ago. And it's just really nice to say, great, we go to these different places and revisit them after years and years. And then one of the formative times for me is that when I was in high school, there was a high school trip where I was saving up for a car. And then there was this neat trip to Europe that there was multiple schools were sending some kids to. And my parents didn't have a lot of money. But I was like, they're like, do you want a car? Do you want this trip? And I'm like, well, I want the car. And they're like, no, I think the trip is going to be more formative. We're going to send you on the trip. You can buy your own car. I'm like, okay, fine. But it was one of the most formative trips I've ever been on, because back then there was no internet. There was not, we had just basic news services. We could read things. But there wasn't that kind of sharing of information that we have now. The world wasn't nearly as small. And I did a 22-day, 11-country tour through Europe. And it was just amazing, getting into Italy and England and Germany and all of these different incredible countries, France, and being able to go back now, those many, many years later into Paris. And we went this year and saw it again, caught some of the Olympics. It's just really amazing. And so my son's 18 and he's traveled a lot. And that's something he's now really embodied and want to do that as part of his career. So we'll see how that turns out. But he's not bad for 18-year-old. I think he's been to 11 different countries and 32 states. So not bad for an 18-year-old.
Very cool. You got a favorite airport that from your European vacation?
Favorite airport. We spent a lot of time in Charles de Gaulle. It's all right. It's a big, sprawling airport. Frankfurt was a great little airport. I remember that very much. Enjoyed it. We did one trip a long time ago where we flew in and out of Serbia. So I actually have a Romanian client. So we like having some close proximity where I've been and get to is really neat, having to go to those different places. And it's fascinating. It's just like flying around the U.S. Each airport's a little more distinctive and different, and learn something new about the culture at each one.
Wow, very cool. Well, it's been great having you here in the Sky Lounge. And if people want to follow up with you after this, what's a great way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm on most of the social media. I mean, I'm TechCXO. Please feel free to go to our website. All of my contact information is there. And Kirby Winters, all one word, no space, is my X Twitter handle. So feel free to check me out there. And I'm on LinkedIn as well under Kirby Winters. So would love to hear from anybody.
Well, thanks. It's been great having you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Todd. This has been great.
Thanks for joining us in the Sky Lounge. Please like and subscribe to hear more from Tales from the Sky Lounge here and anywhere else you get your podcasts.